Oh boy. Sylvanas AMA from a bookstore owner. Basically, right? Bookstore owner gets books into their store, obviously before the release date. So this intrepid bookstore owner has just opened it up. Taking care of it, got some gloves on. Very good. But there you go. So this is coming out in the USA March 29th. For the UK, April 11th. And suffice to say, you'll be hearing a lot of Audible links from me in the near future.
Yep, that's for sure.
You will be. So, brace yourself. But also, come on. please. Oh, dear, no, I kid. But, right. So this is actually brilliant. We've got, some interesting plot highlights, some really fun things to discuss.
Yep. So interesting plots such as Lava Eilvor.
Yeah. Lava Eilvor indeed. So it's done from the perspective of her basically telling her life story to Anduin to get him to help her and Zaval willingly. And I think one of the things that a lot of people are going to struggle with or just find to be quite odd in this book is, of course, Sylvanas, while she's telling Anduin this story, she is still sundered. Okay, it's not... Wrong game universe. This is not FF14. She's still soul fractured, Sylvanas. So I saw a lot of people being like, "Oh my god, I can't believe Sylvanas is playing the victim in this. I can't believe she's." And I'm just thinking yeah, it's before she gets her soul back. Of course, she has this warped perspective on reality. That's the point. Surely, right? But yeah, anyway, so she's kind of spilling her life story to Anduin. She sees her younger brother. That she couldn't save from orcs in Anduin. The way that she calls Anduin, the way that she calls Anduin Little Lion is slightly changed from Little Lord Son, or Little Son Lord, whatever, that she called her brother. Right? So, she's seeing that. And as for what this person said, not the greatest thing they've ever read, but actually it's not as bad as they were expecting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Sylvanas is actually... When it comes down to it, I think Sylvanas is an interesting enough character.
She absolutely is.
Christy Golden can write just fine. Absolutely wonderful stuff sometimes. Anduin's an interesting character. There's an interesting kind of dynamic between the two. And Sylvanas does have a fairly rich history as a character. So you just go through that.
If this was all in the game, and there was no flipping and flopping about what the actual plot was, and it was just always like that, this would have been a good story.
Yeah, it's
not because of how it was told.
Yeah, that's...
But you could have done this good.
Yeah. Because
the people who do that other MMO where it seems like they have a plan, or it seems like they're at least very good at pulling threads together, or more importantly, they have the runtime in their game to actually tell their story. They would have done a story like this really well.
Yep.
This is just totally a situation of the story is suffering from internal bullshit and production bullshit, just having no friggin' screen time for their characters in the game. So it's just frustrating. It's like you could read the book and like this story, and then you're just left being like, yeah, but it wasn't in the game. And if this was in the game, it would have been so good.
That's exactly where...
it's just frustrating that it's like that.
Yeah, this is the thing that keeps happening, where everyone complains about transmedia narrative in World of Warcraft, and that complaint is relatively new. Relatively as in, not since, it hasn't always been the case, despite there being a whole ton of stuff that's in, in the game that, or in the books that you don't know about, in the comics and stuff like that, little, books like War of the Ancients. Even War of the Ancients might have been a fairly bad example of it, until it was sort of shown in the game a little bit, but this is definitely one of the worst examples of Blizzard transmedia narrative, which is just it's clearly a reaction to, we couldn't tell the story we wanted to in the game, so we'll tell the story we wanted to, tie up all our plot holes or plot threads, get our motivations out, we'll get them in the book. And that's not how you do a transmedia narrative. That's how you react to not having a game done correctly. And that's kind of the ultimate problem, because you just kind of want to, you'd rather have stuff that's, that's a perspective that's very nice and interesting. That's a nice little bonus point. That's the thing where FF14 does it quite nicely in the Tales from the Whatever per expansion on the thing. Where they're just,
I read was so good.
Yeah, they're just here's these little stories that will go into some detail, but you will not feel like you needed to know this to be any better. It's not I guess, there's a way to put it, I think, where it's almost like the perspective of how much is in the transmedia narrative changes based on how much you actually get. It's like, it's almost as if, you're getting this tiny plate of nothing and then someone else has got a reasonable plate of food. Or like, why are they getting a reasonable food? Because everything has to be food analogy here. Whereas if you're satiated with what you've got, then you won't complain too much about someone getting, something else. You're like, that's fine, but I'm happy. And the problem is people are left unhappy. That said, stuff like, stuff like the mop into wood, that's obviously completely nonsensical. They're like, here's all the motivations for going back in time. Also, the fact that we went back in time, it's all in the book. That was complete bullshit, of course. But that's just the problem with the transmedia narrative. And this is a terrible example, which is frustrating because they know it going in.
Yeah.
They 100%, they're not thinking, this is the World of Warcraft story told perfectly in this book. They're going, fuck, we really wish we could have done this in the game.
Yep. Yep, this is just, hello there, Special Agent Christy Golden. We need you to embark on a mission because we're fucked. So it's the sort of thing, this could be a brilliant book, but the overall situation would still be a total failure because this is not what transmedia narrative is for.
Yeah.
This is using it to mop up your mistakes.
Yep. Now,
people have wanted to know what Sylvanas' motivations are. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the, Sylvanas had a really shit time, by the way, just as a person.
Yeah.
She had got a pretty shitty hand. So, Matt, why don't you roll us quickly through Sylvanas' motivation, and I'm going to go into that room, and I'm going to press the please wake me up inside button, and get some coffee. Yep. I'm going to be super quick. All right.
We finally know. Let me just check with the right page. Yes. We finally know what Sylvanas' motivation actually was, right? Because that's the one thing that they've kind of... We've not known. We've had no idea what she's been thinking outside of the line, the world is a prison and I'll set us all free. There was also the bit where she said, you can't even choose, and then trailed off. I can't remember where that was, but I saw people talk about it. And her entire motivation is genuinely... It's a combination of two things. One is fate. One is the idea that you aren't in control of your own actions because things happen to you. You have to react to them. You don't really get to actually pick your own stuff. You don't get to make a choice. That's how she felt anyway, based on how things in her life happened. And the thing that sent her over the edge was in Edge of Night, whenever she went to see the jailer, whenever she threw herself off Ice Crown, impaled herself on Saronite to kill herself finally. Or fully. That was when she went and met the jailer. And what happened was the jailer showed her the afterlife. And not even like this distorted version, but literally showed her the afterlife, showed her what the Shadowlands was like, and convinced her that it was shit, more or less. So, I'll just quote what the... let me get his name. It was Kazus on Reddit was the one who did this AMA. What he said was... One of the more interesting bits with Silve meeting Zaval after her suicide was him sending the Valkyrie to show her many of the afterlives to make his point about life and death being unfair. So that's... Obviously, Sylvanas has seen more of the afterlife than we have, but we'll get back to that. They took her to one afterlife made entirely of fire and lava, where these lava eel-like creatures go for their afterlife. This one swims by, and the Valkyrie tell her that it ate their mate to save them from dying from disease and old age, which their culture held up as a supreme act of love. Their reward in death was to never be with their mate, as they got sent to a different afterlife because the Arbiter decided that. Sylvanas asks them if anyone gets to be with their loved one in death, thinking of their parents and brother that died and thinking she'd never be with them again unless she helped the jailer remake everything. Which makes it so small scale, so personal that you kind of feel like that's okay. But it's the fact that we're finding this out in the book is really, really honestly depressing, because it's, obviously that's where the lava eel vor comes from, where the whole point is this person did something great, because they loved their loved one so much. That's great culture of self-sacrifice. And then the Arbiter was like, and these two people have lived different lives. They're different by how the Shadowlands been set up, by how the first ones designed it, and then fired it off into different afterlives. And that's where she's annoyed about, because she's so family-oriented. She's so whatever else. See, Zaval didn't do that because Zaval was working on the design of the first ones. He did do it, but he's the one who watched all this and then went, this is bullshit. I don't want this to happen. But they did, again, does not really a good job of telling us this. The jailer has at no point been able to explain how this is unfair. He just said it's unfair. And then, of course, the jailer also didn't tell us anything whatsoever. And then in the game, they kind of, I don't want to say retconned, but they turned it so it was more about the threat, which we believe is the Devourers, but the big threat that was coming, which pulled it away from this bit of him complaining it's unfair, which then means it's awful because he's convincing her it's unfair without fully believing that. But anyway, to go on, it's her motivation is generally her family, which I think is really annoying because all of the Sylvanas that we know, the Sylvanas that we know from World of Warcraft as opposed to Warcraft 3, where we saw a decent bit of her, but not that much. Whenever you go into the Banshee Sylvanas that we know, the Banshee Queen, very little of that mattered to her in the end, because everything that was focused was the trauma that she went when she was killed by Arthas and the stuff that happened when she was younger. Because it goes into a lot of detail with her family, her younger brother, and the impact that has. You know, she blames herself for the Little Lord's son, the Little Lion, Little Lord's son, her brother. She feels bad for his death because she didn't train him because she wanted him to have like a soft, easy, comfortable life instead of making him fight to get strong. Then he died to the orcs whenever they invaded. And she felt terrible about that enough. But this is where the point about fate gets into it, because she didn't train him, so he died. That's her guilt. But then she realizes that whenever Arthas killed her and brought her back as a Banshee, before she wrested control, she was actually forced to destroy a village, and that's where her brother would have lived. So she sees all these little I guess possibilities, and everything leads to her brother dying at her, and every way it's her fault. So she feels terrible, and that's what her whole character basically is. Literally just, I lost my family. I'm sad about that. And that's what drove everything she did. Everything she did, everything she was.
That's going to completely, haunt someone for a very long time.
Yep, but as I was saying, that's pretty bad for the player experience of Sylvanas.
Well, because we never experienced it with her.
Yeah, but also because that's not the Sylvanas we know. The Sylvanas players spend all their time with is the Banshee Queen, and nothing that happened as the Banshee Queen matters to her, ultimately. So yeah, like what she meant by this world is a prison is everyone's a prisoner of cruel fate and it makers in different system. And even in death, that doesn't go any better because your arbiter just decides. So it's all just having a big ragey at being alive.
That's it.
Yep, things out of her control is her fault. She feels that way. Well, she felt one of it was her fault and then the other was fate. So it's like, well, I have no control over my life, so I'm going to tear the whole thing down. And the jailer will help me do that. But,
it's her personal reason for doing very stupid things.
Yep. Poor me. I'll literally burn the world and be forgiven. Yep. That's exactly what happened to her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is literally,
Sylvanas. It's quite weird because I mean, it's like you have that character that's pragmatic in their exterior.
Yeah.
And they can have reasons for that. They can have motivations.
Yeah.
And that, pragmatism is, how they go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the best way to see Sylvanas. That this is all of the stuff that's, in her person, but it's completely out of her, it's out of character for her to, open up about how she feels about things.
Yeah.
As we see, actually a few times in the game, with the, medallion thing you get. The necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that all makes sense, but I think it's just because this hasn't been foregrounded massively in the player experience, and because she's been so messy so recently. Yeah,
it's
just feels odd.
Yeah, it's annoying because I think individually as a character story, I think this is okay.
Yeah,
this is someone getting so shafted by life, but making one wrong decision and then being haunted for that wrong decision forever, and then being forced to do things out of your control is a really reasonable way to rebel against. It's I'm going to tear down the system because this system's inherently unfair. I think that's logically sound and completely fair. It's just the story wasn't told in a way that makes us feel for her or care about her, because that's the case where you have a villain who does terrible things and go, oh, well, obviously we're supposed to feel sorry for her here. It's like, oh, you had a really, really horrible thing and then you did all this horrible stuff. But it's because of the soul split gets involved, and that takes away some of the weight of the, from the logical perspective, it takes away some of the weighting of like the burning down the goddamn tree. But so much of it's just, man, why? I don't care. I don't care. I don't feel bad for you. You've done worse crimes than your trauma allows you to. And obviously that's something the real world has a real like a problem with. When you start to get into that thing of, well, what drives you to do crime? You do crime. We have to assume you're cognizant, not controlled by the wheels of destiny. And everything on this is just like, oh yeah, per you, destiny did you bad. Just go hang out with your lover in hell.
Watch devs.
Yep.
Yeah. That's just look. It's exactly what you said.
Yep.
Yeah. Ugh, Sylvanas. Now it's time for things to get really wacky.
Yeah.
You ready? Are you ready? Turns out it was the jailer all along. He just knew it all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I actually do have sort of a video for this and a sort of idea for how this could make sense without him being, 18th dimensional chess.
Yep.
But this is a kind of a tough one. I think the read in the jailer that made the most sense and was like the least, loopy and damaging to the lore.
This one?
Was this one? Oh, there you go. Yeah, so a prop from that stream where I sort of charted down that, I try this and then that and then that. Oh, it's like the Taliesin. He keeps on trying different plans and
he was an opportunist. One eventually worked.
Yeah. And then if you kind of look at that in retrospect and you only see the path taken and you don't see all the things he tried, then he looks like a crazy genius.
Yeah.
It's like that thing of people, they look up to like some crazy successful person. They're like, wow, you were clearly just so, and they don't actually know that they probably suffered a bunch through that. They probably, unless they were just silver spoon shit.
Yeah.
But, it's like, you never hear about the 5 ideas that fail, the 3 games that fail, the business that you never hear about that. So it's like there's a little bit of that. And that can make the jailer feel better as a player.
Mm-hmm.
This really risks the jailer feeling fucking awful.
Yep.
Okay, so part of her first meeting with the jailer ends with him sending her back with the Valkyr, but one of them staying to take her place, so the leaders of the Covenants and the Arbiter don't realize that something is happening. So basically they're adding a bunch of shit around the Edge of Night story that apparently they just didn't tell you back then. It's so obvious that none of this shit was planned. Stop pretending it is, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
This is, even recently, like in the video in the twinning coming up about how FF14 does such a good job of leaving things open and then pulling it all together. They do it in a way where it feels good.
It is great.
In a way where it feels like it was planned because it fits well. Unlike this.
Yeah, because feelings was important to the players.
Learn how to make your story fucking plausible.
Yeah.
Like, actually feel plausible.
Yeah.
And again, do I think that Steve believes a fucking word of what he said? Probably off a teleprompter. Definitely. In that patch 8.3, 9.2 developer video thingy. No, I don't think he knows that this is all, fuck, it's all went to shit.
Yep.
But it's Blizzard.
Savage mode.
Blizzard are corporate as fuck. Blizzard are so corporate. They are the least agile fucking company out there in gaming, it would seem, right? So there's no way he's going to be able to be honest about this shit. But, because it's entirely Emperor's New Clothes, we all just have to sing along and pretend that this was all planned. So,
Blizzard's in the nip, but no one's allowed to say it.
Yep. Before she leaves, before Sylvanas leaves, Zaval tells her 5 things as a sort of prophecy. I forget the order, but the gist of it is the Legion will come back. You will, quote, step out of the shadows and lead. A sword will pierce the heart of your world. You will hold the blood of the world and realize its power. And then you will shatter the roof of the world. And basically, at the meeting in Dalaran before Legion, she actually realizes that the first one of these, that it's happened. So there's that. And she's like, oh, wait. Oh, shit. Is this right? Now, she doesn't actually officially accept the Jailer's deal until after the sword hits Azeroth. So at that point, like, multiple of them have happened, and she's held the Azerite. She knows.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Which, it's the, the epilogue, patch 7.3.5, where her and Anduin pick up the Azerite. That's the moment where she decides to go Team Jailer.
Yes.
And you can almost see it in her eyes. The Azerite, because they were trying to say that the Azerite was almost giving these characters glimpses of the future.
Yes. So, maybe someone in chat will know, which is, is any of that even slightly foreshadowed in Before the Storm? Because Before the Storm goes into a lot more detail about how they feel when they touch the Azerite. I'm willing to bet, even though we're inside Sylvanas' head for that point, I believe not. I really want to check. I'm not going to check now because that would be it would take me a while. I think I might tweet after the stream if that's true or not.
Okay, so be on the lookout for Matt's Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Suspicious.
I remember it all being about power. I remember her going, the weapons we could make with this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm touching World Blood, the sword, the shadow lead. Oh, the Jailer was right. Imagine if I opened that book and I literally saw the Jailer was right.
Yeah, that book was written by Christy Golden.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't, it's not Shadows Rising, which was written by Madeline Rue. So this is Sylvanas being like, oh, wow, this totally fits that prophecy that's going to be in your next book, but that clearly none of us have any idea about. Yeah. Interesting. So that's weird.
Yep, you're right. It showed her conquering Stormwind. In her vision, yep.
And they conveniently steer themselves away from that in this book.
Yep.
Because the whole, Sylvanas is going to go for Stormwind. It's actually a faction war. The cannon's going to fire. That was all Afrosabi shit. Now, the thing is, we know that Sylvanas going real fucking, I don't know, Mongolia style.
Yeah.
As in, just being like, yo, we're going to burn this city. So then we go to the next city, they're just going to surrender, so we don't have to expend resources, Yeah. Where it's just like Sylvanas just going to go real fucking hardcore. And that was, this sort of Afrosabi, direction, the whole show. We're going to burn Teldrassil, trust me, bro. Where, we don't know how much all of the Shadowlands was their plan at that point in time. We really don't know because, as I said... I had heard things about the Zaval, the guy that we kill, is not the Jailer, or maybe, wasn't supposed to be the main villain. And then we've more recently, had just a lot more people putting the pieces together, right, about, the Primus and all of that. So it very much seems like, oh man, this story's just not being planned, and that's just made it all so fucking messy. But anyway, once Sylvanas accepts this deal, Mal'Ganis comes to her to give her instructions, and that's to send as many souls to the Maw as is possible to get the power. Now, initially, she plans on Stormwind, and what this means is whenever Christy Golden, and I don't actually think she was a Blizzard employee at this stage, or maybe she was shortly after. Anyway, whenever Christy Golden wrote Before the Storm,
I think she was, yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, when she wrote Before the Storm, and it ends foreshadowing that Stormwind is going to be attacked. I assume nobody knows about this. Nobody knows about this. Before the Storm certainly doesn't seem to know about this, even though it's literally what happens with Sylvanas and her actual reaction to the Azerite.
Yep.
So she then changes her plan to Darnassus. And I guess she's so deceptive and intelligent and all of that she even hides this from her own inner monologue because she knows she's being written by an author.
That's high
and
level.
She doesn't want the author to know. That's how smart Sylvanas is.
That is honestly a genuinely exceptional story concept for some fourth wall breaking shit. That's cool.
Yeah, cool. Invoice in the post. Now, at that point, she's basically totally unhinged from morals. And so she swaps Stormwind for Darnassus. And she's just totally unplugged from morals and caring because in her mind, she's actually saving everyone from an unjust system. So anything she does is okay.
Yeah, that's the thing where all of her morality here is literally just, no, I'm doing this for the greater good because I fundamentally believe the world is fucked. So I will just burn everyone, kill everyone, whatever, because it's all in the name of fixing everything. Yeah. Yay. Woohoo.
I guess she gets to sort of try to do that.
Yeah.
She dies. Now, remember, Legion. Well, part of the prophecy that Zaval tells Sylvanas to get her to agree to the deal is that she would be war chief and Vol'jin would use the exact words that Zaval basically said he would use. And at that stage, she's like, oh, shit, this is part of the plan.
Some MK Ultra activation shit like.
Yeah. The numbers, Mason. Meaning, yep, Soul Cage was supposed to enslave Aegir. Now, this is really weird, because she hasn't fully signed on to the plan. Right? So it's almost a bit weird when you kind of draw these two together, because it's like, wait, so she only agrees to the deal at this point, and that's when she's unhinged? But then also the Soul Cage thing was so that the souls meant for the Halls of Valor could go to the Maw instead, so that Zaval could get more power. I mean, maybe is that Sylvanas just knows she's working with these forces, and like she hasn't agreed yet, but she's going to help them out because it helps her. Could still be something like that. But of course,
which doesn't explain any of her really emotional reaction to what happens.
Yeah, and
because
now
that's clearly not what was intended.
Now here's here's just a little bit of lore for people like Noble, because I know that this is something me and him both feel pretty strongly about. Remember when Sylvanas was supposed to like choose between herself and her people? Remember that whole plot line they marketed in the Legion little hype website they built? And it turned out they very much went away from that direction. Like, why does Sylvanas, anime style, grip her bow after? It's because she's really pissed. Now, are you telling me Sylvanas is that pissed off that Gen bested her because now the souls can't go to the Maw instead? Or are you telling me that's because her plan was to get more Valkyr so that she could continue the stuff for her people, presumably so there could be a fucking epic Forsaken war machine? Yet, really? So here's the thing. Sure, this makes sense, but I don't fucking buy that was the plan in Legion. And that makes us all feel fiddled around with and cheated.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's the thing where that completely was... especially when you spend so much time trying to think about it as people who's like... Because we're solving mysteries that they're setting up for us on the go, right? We're not doing that, like, obviously we do it because it's what we do YouTube-wise, but... It's also like a thing a lot of players do. There's so many people who love World of Warcraft lore and love putting the story together and speculating on it in so many different ways and following along with what the community's doing on that front. And they just clearly don't respect that in any capacity versus the own story they want to tell.
Now, there's a bunch of people who come in and they will immediately say to you, you're just angry because it's not where you wanted the story to go. And it's like, no, it's not that.
Yeah, where I wanted the story to go was somewhere that's logically consistent and is satisfying for me as a player and as a viewer, and it hasn't, which is my right as a consumer to not be happy with the product.
And also, we would like it if the story they're telling is consistent with a story that they told, and that they're not just changing things willy-nilly. Because it's not we're pissed that our theory didn't come true. It's we're pissed that it seems like half the time nothing fucking matters because your story's been a mess for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, this is exactly where the Elune stuff from this expansion is what killed me the most. Because I have spent like probably hundreds of hours over the course of the last, when did I start playing? Like 2006, over the past like 16 years, thinking about the Tauren myth, thinking about Elune, about Anshe, all that stuff, trying to piece that together, especially in Legion with Elinaria and all that stuff going on, with the Tears of Elune, with them awakening Zera. All that stuff was properly like built up like a mystery, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. That's what, not to bring it up again, but FF14 has a mystery novel vibe to it. I love when I'm involved in a story as, like, not literally involved, but I love when I'm getting to piece it together as things happen. I love watching mystery shows. I love that stuff. But they never respect any of that. So the Elune thing in particular, here's the Elune revealed at last for no good reason whatsoever, and it's not in a way you think it's interesting. Also, she's the sister of this fucking 3D printed robot from the Death World. You're like... I feel like all of my investment as a player has been thrown in the bin.
You feel fiddled with.
Yeah, I feel like I am trying to play a game with you and you're just throwing the toys out of the pram. You're maybe they're losing, in the sense of you're losing a game of chess and you kick the board over. That's sort of what it feels a little bit like to me.
You're bringing them in a board game.
Yeah.
But they're the game master, so they're just changing the rules of the board game.
Yeah, it's
as
like
you're playing. I would what the fuck? This is not. How can I have faith that any move that I make matters or anything like that?
Yeah.
Because you keep on changing the rules out from under me.
Yeah, what's that Jeopardy thing? But the points don't matter. It's exactly that. Where the point, everything is just made up as time goes on, which means why should I care about anything any character says if it's going to be different next week? It's going to be different next month.
Speaking of, I suppose, de-Afrosabification, the Wrathgate.
Yep.
So, basically with the Wrathgate, So initially, she comes to Lordaeron, both Arthas control. She meets Putris, who wants to research the Blight. She asks him if he seeks a way to find a cure, and he says, why would I want to get rid of this gift? She makes him Grand Apothecary, and things continue for a bit. Later, after Wrathgate, she is heading across town to hear the report when she realizes Varamathras and her guards are acting suspicious. A vendor bumps into her and sneaks a vial of some sort of potion that she drinks without being found out. She gets to Putris and sees her usual guards are all dead, hanging meat hooks, and a barrel of blight above her head. Putris and Varamathras pull the coup we know about, but the book confirms she actually didn't order Putris to use it on the living as well. It was only meant for Arthas. She didn't do it. Aphrosabi's interview has now been decanonized.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That was at the time when Aphrosabi was, I think, from what I understand, at like peak alcohol and inappropriate work behavior and just, bad time. But, is also the creative director of the game, meaning that he makes the decisions of what the story is and what the canon is. So in that interview, he said that, canon was, Sylvanas was way more involved in that. Do you know what's really funny? Lots of people just being like, hey, that feels like bullshit. That doesn't seem true. And all of the fucking corporate defense force who came out were like, no!
Makes sense.
This always could have made sense! This story is beautiful! Taldrassil is morally complex!
This is the morally great story.
All those fucking limp dick weasels. God. They always come out of the woodwork to fucking defend the big corporation. And I don't know, as I would put it, the people with fucking brains in the room are being reasonable. And yeah, this is just being like, nah, that Aphrosabi shit's bullshit. So it's good to know that's true.
I mean, all right. Billy White Jr. Steve Denizer burned down $1 billion franchise for a cartoon dead girlfriend. Don't put it that way. That makes him sound really fucking cool. Imagine if you had the capability to do that. Would you not want that in your headstone? Burn down $1 billion franchise for a cartoon dead girlfriend, right? 100%.
Yeah.
Do worse.
That's pretty infinite power. That's a high power level move. Okay, so there's that, right? Wrathgate. Just, confirmed. And I guess, next time that people want to go all trying to defend the, the stuff, like, oh no, it makes sense. I can turn myself into a cognitive pretzel to justify this. Sometimes there's drama behind the scenes, stuff's bullshit, and this is a great example of that. Right. Nathanos next. Right, so OP says a lot about Nathanos, goes into much detail about how close they were, and Nathanos was in the plan to help the jailer for quite a while. Nathanos was honestly good in the book, not even close to how annoying he was in-game. There was a moment before the Saurfang challenge at the gates where he wants them to run away together and forget all the other shit. He actually pulls that "you are my whole world" line, which I thought was a bit on the nose, lol. Nice to know the character's done well. And that was the thing. I remember doing, it was a recent video on the channel. I think it might have been the Sylvanas video that was shortly after the new year. And, I was kind of like saying, hey, there's actually quite a lot. And, you kind of look into the lore, and even while Sylvanas is, Ranger General and all that, they're actually just gallivanting off like a bunch of lovebirds, how would you put it? Go do some special training with each other. Go do some special reconnaissance, etc. Right? So they're doing all of that, and it's like, oh, it's kind of cute. And you never really see that in-game. So it's like, what the canon lore is was way nicer than what's in the game, so, I think fair enough that he is done decently in this book, because there is actually stuff there to be done decently. Arthas.
Yay! I love Arthas. Please tell us more about Arthas in this book.
It's funny, I can hear you typing. I'm like, oh shit, what's went wrong?
Oh, nothing's went wrong.
Yeah, so Arthas was not the jailer's pawn. Again, this is something where they didn't tell us. Nobody really had a great way of knowing. They didn't put it in the game. So she does realize at the end that the pain she felt realizing that no one got to be with their loved ones, even after death, had left a gaping wound in her psyche that the jailer took advantage of. She honestly thought she was an ally, not a pawn. The first meeting between Zaval and Sylvanas after her suicide, he actually tells her he was the one to give Frostmourne and the helm to the Legion, but Arthas took the power for himself to grow his own power.
Yeah, Arthas was cool after all.
She sort of thinks he wouldn't have tried to own up to that if he was just going to trick her, but it was basically a triple cross.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he underplayed what he really wanted to do with Arthas, because in reality, of course, he was pissed off he couldn't control Arthas.
Yeah. Indeed.
There's quite a bit of Arthas. It's that basically it's all that's on her mind for half the book. It's told in sections starting from her childhood, then to the year with the orcs, the Arthas section, her suicide, meeting the Jailer Legion, etc. The biggest thing with Arthas was that the Jailer confirms Ner'zhul wanted to take over Arthas, but Arthas won, then took the power from Zaval, and turned to conquest and power grabbing for his own sake. So yes, Zaval was behind the Lich King, but it was still Arthas who did what he did.
Nice one. That's great. Arthas had agency.
Good.
Which is the thing everyone was terrified of, that they would remove his agency by going, Lich King Pawn. But no, he did all that. He was the cool badass everyone liked because he was the cool badass.
Yeah, but now his final line doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make the sense that it seemed to make. When the helm comes off. Or is it just when the helm comes off, it's like all of the things that altered his soul are gone. He's back to normal.
That's
and
clearly
like
the point,
how, okay. So like how Sylvanas is just like, oh dear, that's what I did. I guess that's what it's like for Arthas.
Yeah.
Do we know the Jailer's plan?
Absolutely, 100%. Of course we know the Jailer's plan. We know everything the Jailer has done, why he's done it, all his motivations. Absolutely everything. Of course we do. No, we fucking don't. We know nothing. We know nothing. This book mentions nothing about the Jailer's grand plan whatsoever.
We literally, at the end, have no idea why Zaval did what he did, other than it's unfair and I want to change it. There's a crack in reality, or there's something's coming, something bad's coming. What?
Yeah.
What's going on? Who are you?
Yeah. let's pull together the Jailer's motivation. He talked about being unfair. At some point in Shadowlands marketing somewhere, and convinced Sylvanas that it was unfair and needed to be made, right?
Yep.
That was it. Then we find out his goal, which is to dominate everything, which is like, well, if you think it's unfair and you're just going to take control of everything, that makes you a bastard. That makes you like the bad version of the kid who was bullied at school in terms of, just being sort of becoming evil out of trauma. And then at the end, it turns out he's actually, no, it's all about saving the universe or the cosmos from this like greater threat. So which one is it? It's clearly nothing about it being unfair, because that's not what he was said in his last moments.
Yeah.
Which means it was, we have to go with what was in his last moments, which means we don't know what he's planning outside of unite the cosmos by force to defeat this greater threat.
Stand together as one. You know what it is? Who the fuck cares? No one cares.
And the best part is, I bet they have no idea either. I bet they have some cliff notes for the Devourers and nothing else, because that's the one thing we've learned from this book. They have no idea what they're doing next or why, or they don't. They don't even set up specific points that they can pull into something good, because they've not done it yet.
I think they have an immediate plan for what they're going to do for the next expansion. I think it's probably going to be trying to just bring things back to normality, and I think they're just going to try to develop from there.
Do they have a plan for that?
Well, it's like it's not as if they wrote Alexander knowing about the twinning and Shadowbringers. Yeah. So you don't need to have a perfect plan. What matters is ultimately what you ship.
Yeah, you need to have the ability to pull it back together, though.
And that's the thing.
Yeah,
I think if they're going to be restarting sort of on their own terms going forward, they'll be more able to do that. Whereas this just seems to be an utter fucking homunculus.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Where the reason it works for that Alexander story in particular is that they close it off, and then they have a way to like crack it open and then pull that thread out. But this is the thing, they don't do that here. They don't close stories off. The whole storyline of the whole point of the purpose, the whole thing about fate, the whole thing about us being the prophesied ones that come into the first ones, that's not closed. Yeah. That is left gaping, hanging open. That is
peoples whose fate cannot be determined by scrying the timelines.
Yeah, that's just no, that's dropped, or sorry, that's held on for later.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between closing it and leaving a crack, or closing it but having a point that you can establish on, and leaving it wide open. And they just consistently leave everything wide open because they don't close anything. Well, obviously the first time they could have closed the jailer, but they didn't close the jailer because they didn't tell us anything that made it feel satisfyingly closed. And also they went, oh no, he was doing it for a reason all along. You just didn't know that reason at any point. He never stopped to tell you.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, we want a satisfying conclusion, please.
Yeah, I don't care. Cut your patch short, and I don't care if it's terrible. Just make it vaguely satisfying. It doesn't need to be sensible. Just make it satisfying.
And there's one last thing for us to talk about here.
Yep.
And that is how this prophecy could make sense. And I'm going to do a full video on this. I think, I don't know, I've like a third written it. Mm-hmm. Basically, right, at one point we're fairly sure the Primus and the Jailer were the same guy.
Yeah.
And Zaval was a different character. We've covered that last week. The clip is there. Wowhead did a big article on it as well.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. The Primus had a time ally.
He did, yes.
And the Primus's time ally is basically what allowed him to like watch the same battle again and again and again and again and again and again and work out like how to become this master of all things war.
Yeah.
So if he had this time ally, could it actually be then that the Jailer had access to that time ally, had access to that knowledge, those memories, whatever it is, that means that the Primus was the Jailer, Zaval, was able to basically see the future, see these events happen.
Yeah. Possibly. Possibly.
And then it turns out that like the reason why he can't see his own defeat is because that's where we come into the picture with his timeline. Yeah. And as covered in Elisond, Elisond in the same way, like Elisond had planned everything out.
Yeah.
But never saw the timeline in which we won.
Yeah,
Zaval saw every single timeline that led up to us fighting him, other than the timeline where we then beat him. Because of that thing where just we're defying fate. We are the one true choice. Watch devs. I'm just going to keep on having to say watch devs all the time because I think, it might get people into the right headspace to think about some of these things. Mm-hmm. So I basically think that's like kind of it. So the Jailer is not a big like 7-dimensional chess man. He just has access to knowing what's going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
But he's overconfident. That leads to him being really overconfident. And ultimately, that's it. That's what we call in the next expansion. Fate Breaker!
We're the Fateless.
Maw Walker. Fate Breaker.
No,
whatever.
We're the Fateless one from Kingdoms of Amalur.
Of course, which nobody related to World of Warcraft worked on at all.
No.
So that could work. I mean, fuck. Alexander, the Warrior of Light.
Yeah, Jailer is Quick Thinks All Thoughts, yep.
The Jailer is Quick Thinks.
Yep, Quick Thinks All Thoughts is the Jailer. That is one possible read of this, yeah.
That's the segment done.
Yep. Also,
it is though, isn't it?
Quick Thinks All Thoughts, such a good name.